Thank you so far for the ones who have joined and signing up. Hope you get a lot out of today. The webinar is a panel of us, and we're going to talk about volume hiring at scale. We really do want you all to join in though. So if you'd like to put questions in the chat, and we will make sure that we've got time to answer those questions, or as many as we can at the end. So welcome everybody. I do know most of you, and for those who don't, nice to meet you. So just to confirm, we're going to be looking at volume hiring at scale, and ultimately where technology ends and humans begins. Everyone's got their own opinions on this, and that's what it's all about. There's no right or wrong here, but it's a discussion about how we do things at Amberjack. But ultimately, we've got a fantastic panel who are going to talk about their experiences as director of TA, head of TA, whatever you want to call it. So first of all, like I said, most of you know me. My name is Jared Massey. I've been at Amberjack Global for nearly a year now. Previous to that, I've had 18 years as in senior operations roles within RPO or head of resourcing roles in-house. So nice to meet those who I've not met already. Simon, if you want to introduce yourself from Amberjack as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jared. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Simon Cache. I'm one of the account directors here at Amberjack Global. I've been here coming up 2 years, but I've been in the volume recruitment and HR tech space for around about 15 years now. I start to lose track. But I manage a portfolio of clients here at Amberjack who are in both the early careers and experienced volume hiring space. Lovely to meet you all.
Excellent, thank you, Simon. And just for those who don't know who Amberjack are, we're ultimately an end-to-end TA solutions provider, specialising in everything to do with volume recruitment. So hopefully you know about us already, but you'll hear a little bit more about us today as well. So most importantly, I am now going to introduce you to our very prestigious guests, who I have actually known for many years in different guises. So James, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Thanks, Jared. I was a bit confused when you said prestigious, but there we go. Hello to everybody who's joined the call, the webinar. I am Director of Talent Acquisition for EMEA at Cummins. I've been at Cummins for about 1.5 years now, and I've worked within talent acquisition for about 27 years. Work for a number of different organisations. And for those people who don't know Cummins, Cummins are a US-based 75,000 people sort of diesel engine manufacturer is probably our mainstay, but a whole range of sort of engineered products manufacturing. Thanks, Jared.
Cheers, James. Claire.
Hello all, I'm Claire Wiseman. I'm Head of Talent Acquisition for Eurocell PLC. Been here for about 8 years. I've been in talent acquisition for 35 years, but I lie about my age, so let's say 10. And I've had agencies, I've run my own agencies, I've been in-house recruiter and I've been consultant. So I've seen it through all guises. We have a heady mix at Eurocell of volume vacancies and more strategic vacancies. So I hope I can add to the conversation today.
Great, thanks, Claire. And last but not least, it's Mr. Andrew Greer, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. You've said my name, so I'll just say that currently I am a mix of interim and permanent placement type worker. I've been a good fortune over the years, maybe, I think it's about 25 years-ish. And TA recruitment agency starter and then in-house for quite a while. But I'm pretty much industry agnostic. So my ways of working are really more about the methods, the processes and how we hire rather than what we're hiring, or the different mechanisms around that. So it gives me sometimes a slightly different perspective, because I'm also constantly looking for transferable lessons between the sectors rather than assuming that every hiring problem is unique, because they're not, but we do and always recognise those nuances in each organisation that I enter. So yeah, pretty much me. Been around for a long time. Looking forward to this chat.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So what we're going to try and cover off today, there'll be other things we cover off, and we might not get to the exact of this, but just an oversight of some general topics. So we want to see where technology adds real value in high volume recruitment, and ultimately, let's be honest with each other, where it can fall short. How to design more human insight-led candidate journeys. All this talk of AI and automation. How do we ensure that the candidate journey is as best as it can be, and then practical ways to balance the speed, scale, and fairness in the modern volume hiring process. So I am going to start the questions now. So this is one for all, but we'll start with Andrew. What does good look like in high volume recruitment today? And there's been a lot of changes in the last few years. For you, what do you think has changed the most in the last couple of years? Andrew, over to you. He's paused. I think you got a connection issue, Andrew. James, can I hand over to you while Andrew sorts out his connections?
Yeah, no problem. So, what does good look like? I guess from an operational point of view, and where the value is being able to process a large volume of applications in a sort of efficient way that doesn't adversely impact candidates or groups of candidates in a particular way. When I think about our early careers campaign in EMEA, in Europe, Africa, and Middle East for Cummins, we hire about 200 early careers individuals per annum, and we receive around 20,000 applications. I think last year we topped out about 24,000. So we're receiving over 100 applications per role being advertised, which is fantastic for us and fantastic for the brand. But it provides it provides a problem or provides a challenge for us. How do we fairly cover that volume of individuals in an efficient and timely way, because candidates want to be processed quickly, but we're also competing with other employers. So speed, precision, accuracy, fairness, these are all things that I would say are important from a high volume process. With regard to your last question, or the last part of your question about what's kind of changed in the last 2-3 years, I think you suggested it earlier, Jared. It's kind of that pressure towards ever increasing automation, ever increasing use of AI within the process, and so as a US based business, we're kind of wary of that, I would say. If you look across the pond, you can see very, very clearly that within TA there is distinct pressure, litigation, challenges going on around the use of AI within processes. So we are very reticent of embracing a complete end-to-end automated process, and endeavour to keep a human in the loop, it's fair to say, in every decision step that we have. So I think that's probably a fair summary of where I think we are from a high volume perspective.
Yeah, great. And Andrew, over to you again now. You sorted your connections. Similar guys, but maybe bring to life. I know that you've worked at Sangaban because we worked together there, and also Mondelez. Clearly, there was quite a lot of roles at both of those companies where the volumes are very high. And so, what did you put in place to make sure that looks good from all perspectives?
I think, well, what looked good then, because you did say what looks good now, but I don't think there's been a massive change apart from the stuff that James spoke about on AI. So in those kind of environments, Saint-Gobain, Mondelez that you mentioned, and success was not really just around speed and cost. And I think what's good now, what you need to get is balance. So it's balancing up quality, yes, speed, and yes, some cost. But essentially, it's that candidate experience and the retention piece as well, which is often missed. So I think that kind of volume recruitment, it depends if you're operating on a seasonal basis or if you're hiring at volume to keep them permanent on a longer term basis, because then what becomes important is the retention. Because most of the places I've operated in, the volume piece is as much a retention issue and quality of hire or quality of candidate, which is a little bit easier to track, rather than just how many can we hire, how fast can we hire, and how much is it costing. So I think for me, what looks good is that balance across those different elements. So quality, speed, experience, retention, and really roundabout working to solve workforce problems. So not just filling the vacancies. So what are the real root causes of the issues? What are the hiring managers saying? What does the data tell you? What's the anecdotal information that comes in to actually get to the root causes to why we're not keeping those that we are finding? And then that hiring manager accountability matters as well, just as much as TA capability, because the most common thing that still happens over my whole tenure in TA has been that it finger pointing at TA and recruitment as whatever guys they're coming into. So it's that hiring manager accountability. So it's developing them to be accountable, but give them the training and development that they need as well. So I suppose it depends on the context. If you're hiring to keep on a permanent basis, the reality is if half your hires are leaving within 3 months, you've not recruited successfully, you've just recruited really quickly. So success comes in that kind of retention piece, in my view anyway, and definitely the change that James mentioned. AI, that's helping us filter at volume, but I'm still a fan of making sure that we don't over-automate, making sure that we keep the human elements in there, but uncovering the balance in each sector, each organisation, each place. That's a bit of a trick. That takes a bit of a deep dive into various other elements. So yeah, that'd be pretty much what looks good for me. Those kind of key factors.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. Always quality of hire has got to be seen. Very hard to measure, but attrition is one of them. So yeah, absolutely, that quality of hire is so important. And Claire, over to you again, similar subject, but where do you see the biggest failure points in volume hiring process today?
So for us, it's been a change of mindset. Historically, hiring 1,000 people is considered a success, even if they're left after 2 weeks, just echoing what Andrew and James have said. The failure points are the candidate experience, just being treated as numbers. I absolutely inherited a situation where warehouse and operative staff were just not treated the same as the rest of our business. They didn't get the experience. They often didn't know the size of the company or the quality of the company that they were joining because it was such a poor experience. So they're the point of failures for us. Also with us, we've got a hiring population that perhaps hadn't been invested in terms of volume hiring. They didn't see it as important. So what we're doing now is we're teaching our hiring managers differently, to recruit differently, to retain differently, to onboard differently. And we're seeing some really good numbers coming through in terms of retention.
Right. So you've seen those obvious improvements already. You know, Andrew mentioned quality of hire. One of those is attrition. You've seen that difference already through the changes you've made. Right. Excellent. And Simon, I'd just like to touch with you here, because obviously through Amberjack, we've got some very big clients doing lots and lots of hires a year. And it's really important that, although we bring in that automation through our fantastic technology and processes, that the candidate experience is top notch. So can you just bring it to life, I suppose, with Virgin or Octopus Energy of where you know you've ensured that we are saving time and this higher quality, but making sure that the candidate is still really happy?
Yeah, sure. And I think I'll probably start by saying this: look, with any process or any decision-making process that anybody makes in life, right? You do it with two things. You do it with your head and you do it with your heart. So there's the kind of, you know, you'll make a decision on an organization that you want to join, you know, maybe based on some hard factual things, so salary, location, but you'll also make that decision based on how you feel. Like we make so many decisions in life. How did that company make me feel throughout the process? And I think that's been the balance in volume, really. You know, you have to find that balance between how do you manage all of those candidates through a process, but still leave those candidates feeling, you know, feeling positive, feeling engaged, feeling connected to you as an organization. And we, you know, as you rightly said, we have, you know, a number of different platforms that allow us to do that. It's for us, we ensure, you know, I think having a really in-depth comms strategy is essential. Understanding where all of the touch points are for all of your candidates throughout the process. It's very easy for people to kind of fall out and drop out of processes, particularly when you've got large numbers. You know, people may not be contacted for you know a couple of weeks whilst decisions are being made. What does the comms plan look like for those candidates? Have you considered you know what the channels are that you're going to be using at every stage to ensure that candidates are kept engaged? So we use a multiple different platforms, whether that's SMS to kind of answer those quick fire questions. If a candidate's got a question at 2 o'clock in the morning that's keeping them up about, you know, an assessment center that's happening the next day, they can actually just ping that through as a text and get an instant response, whether it's, you know, location, time, what should I wear, you know, all of that comes through in a really conversational way to the candidates. But then we also use things that we call them like micro learning playlists that, again, it's full of sort of rich content. It could be imagery, it could be video content that just helps support and guide candidates throughout the process. You know, your next stage is going to be this. Here's some hints and tips about what you can do to best prepare for this next stage in the process, whether it's an online assessment, whether it's an interview or an assessment center. So that's how we try and build that sense of feeling connection through the different technology platforms that we use to be able to manage the volume, but keep the kind of human-centered feeling in that process.
Right. Excellent. And leading on to this, you know, that core debate, if you like, technology versus human. You know, there'll be people out there who think that most of the process could be technologies, especially in the future, versus these others who'll say, no, absolutely not. You always need humans in the loop. I personally would always go with that. I may be proven wrong in 4 years' time, but you know, I'm a big believer in human in the loop. But ultimately, we know what we can do to give our recruiters and other people the time to be able to do that through automation. So what part of the hiring journey could be fully automated versus where human interaction is non-negotiable? Is that different roles? Is it different circumstances? Is it just one bit of the process? For you, Claire, you know, if we touch on, you get a lot of warehouse vacancies. What's your take on all of that?
Oh, well, shamefully, I'm absolutely guilty of overly automating in the early days because technology was available and I embraced it all, thinking that we could direct activity in different areas, shamefully, towards more of the hard to fill vacancies rather than our volume hiring. So absolutely guilty. My learnings and my team learnings are just because something can be automated doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be automated. Elements of the process add lots of value when they're automated. For instance, interview scheduling, sometimes, I'm going to caveat the word sometimes there, is perfect on automation. One thing that works really well for us, keeping people up to date with status changes and just doing the check-ins to let people know that we've received their application, which everybody should have as a basic. When they're not being considered for interview, acknowledging it, apologising, that works for us. A horrific story, a horrific quick story, is based on our candidate feedback for volume roles. We were advised from a pool of 100 people they wanted an easy process, all automated, didn't want to speak to anybody. They just wanted to apply, have an interview slot, and then get an interview. So we tried it. It was horrific. There was no human intervention at all. I think we lost about 50% of people at interview stage because they didn't actually realise that they'd applied for a job and booked an interview, and then thought it was a scam job. So we will never over automate. I think to us there is a fine and perfect line between automation and human intervention, and I think it's both sides playing nicely with each other. There's a place for both of us.
Completely and utterly agree. And Claire, so good of you. I'm very much like this as well. I'm sure James and Andrew are, is being honest that, you know, no one does it perfect. You try things, you recognise it's not working, and you tell you know, you get some people talking at events who say they've done the best job ever, they're the best TA. You know, it's good to hear honesty within our journey as TA.
I've learnt my
leaders.
lesson. I've definitely learnt.
Absolutely. So going on to that, because you've touched on that there, that you've over automated. Andrew, James, have you got any examples of where you feel you've over automated, or indeed you've heard of companies that have over automated and realised actually that wasn't the best thing?
You may well have heard about me doing it and learnt, so I accept that.
Yeah, we did have a trial last year within our early career space of automated interviewing, and candidates. So thinking about the candidate journey, candidates went through a pre-screening process, which was automated, although there was some human decision making around that. And then they went into an AI driven interview with interview summaries created. And again, decision making ultimately was human, but the actual interview process itself was automated. And we found the dropout rate was significant compared to what we were used to. Candidates rejected the process, and we have subsequently dropped the automation of any interview stage within our process. I think we misjudged that where candidates would be comfortable with automation. We definitely removed too many human steps, and I think what we failed to do was share our personality, share who we were, and I think that's the thing that really gets lost in a process when you over automate it. You know, Cummins is as I said, it's a US headquartered business. We have a long history. We have a very open, transparent, collaborative personality, and we were unable to convey that and unable to give people confidence around who we were through the interview stages, and it failed. It failed big style. So yeah, we've gone back to fully humaned, if that's a word. I don't think it is a word, by the way, but fully
it should
human.
be.
It should be a word. fairly human interviews in our early career steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon, going back to your experience with Amjac, clearly we've got some really good tools which do automate, but the argument is that it's never fully automated. Can you just talk through how our QA facilities, our human interaction, our checking stats and everything is done to make sure that the automation is the right way to go?
Yeah, of course. So we have a number of human interventions throughout our processes, particularly those that are automated. So, as we've all discussed, like the number of applications, the number of screens, video interviews that are coming through, and James, you might have found this as well, is obviously huge. So we're utilizing a lot more AI in terms of automating that screening process. But in order to make sure that it's that the bias isn't creeping in, and that we're making sure that it's fair and accurate, we've actually increased the amount of kind of human in the loop, I guess, that is a part of that process. So we have a really stringent quality assurance piece that sits behind all of our processes, and before we release, I guess, the AI to volume to screen, it goes through an intensely sort of scrutinized QA period, where we have humans who kind of rescreen everything, make sure that everything is aligned, and that the AI is scoring accurately. And actually what we find over time is typically the AI ends up being even more accurate than our human screeners, because it doesn't sort of suffer from the same fatigues and challenges that humans have, in terms of maybe how well they'll screen at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning versus 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon when the England game's about to happen. So you kind of get that level of consistency, using the kind of automated processes, but ensuring that the quality is always there, behind that. Similarly with some of the tools that I mentioned earlier, where the AI isn't able to answer a question, it flags that, and that automatically comes through to somebody in our team who jumps in and intervenes into that conversation, and takes over that conversation, and is then able to have a real human chat with that candidate, to ensure that we're able to answer the questions, and just pick up on some of those nuanced things that come through in the processes. Again, it's all a part of that support feeling. We want candidates to ensure that they're feeling seen, they're feeling heard, they're not just feeling like a number in the process. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jay. Simon, sorry. Going back to James, is why I mistook the name there, is clearly, and Andrew as well, clearly you've done a lot of volume hiring, not just in the UK, but the companies you've worked for globally as well. And there's so many differences, not just volume hiring, just hiring full stop, between different regions and different countries. So for you, how does your volume hiring strategy change when you move it outside the UK to, especially, I suppose, not westernized countries like UK, like the Middle East, like Eastern Europe? How does your strategy change?
Well, I think you just need to be sensitive to the local market and what the local market can and will tolerate when it comes to automation. An example I can give is recently I travelled to Romania, to Craiova, where we have a big facility, and I was talking to the recruiter there about the apparent lack of automation within the process, and how we could potentially drive some efficiency. But when I sort of questioned around this and understood more about the process that she was owning for the facility, it was apparent that the local market wouldn't tolerate that level of automation. So for her, volume hiring was literally collecting a volume of paper CVs that were dropped off at the gatehouse of the facility, which was something I recall sort of 15, 20 years ago as a recruiter in the UK, but not something that would have happened in Romania, or so something that's still very apparent in Romania. So whilst we can use our technologies to ensure that the candidates are uploaded, records are kept, the process is still efficient. We can use those for internal processes so that we can move candidates quickly through the process. We need to be mindful of how candidates want to communicate with us, and whilst that's quite an extreme example within Romania, it does stand for for any country that you're working with. It's important to understand how where at what level of maturity is the local recruitment market.
Yeah.
I think just to add into some of that what you're describing there, James, I think overall for me the differences between consistency and potentially uniformity. So it's like being consistent doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the same when you go that little bit more global. So when you take things out of the UK, I think generally you can standardize things like governance, technology, data, the principles and your attitudes. But what you need to then layer in is a localized EVP. The attraction might be slightly different. So even your employer brand or your talent brand might translate differently from, Birmingham to Shanghai, for example, even just those simple language barriers, but saying things in a certain way. So I think definitely the global principles. I think it's global principles, local execution, and that consistency doesn't mean everyone does everything the same way. So having tools and platforms and methods and processes that are kind of pick and mix, where you can take the ones that are relevant, to your localized version of that. And I think that's the real kind of key changes. You can still have the same attitudes and look for the same behaviours, but when you get a little bit more technical, that local execution globally becomes more and more important so that it's relevant, because relevance is pretty key in everything, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you do to ensure that you've got all those things covered? I'm sure it's never ever perfect, but what do you do to make sure you've got that standardization, but equally ensuring that all the regions are covered with the differences within those regions?
I think essentially it's just good key governance and compliance and checks that you're tracking and measuring everything. So cliche, if it's not measured, it's not real. It's not,
So using the data.
It's basically the data. But back to that part about it's not over automating it either. It's given that human input opportunity where it's not so heavily automated that you're taking out decision making. Because the one thing that we shouldn't really be fully automating in any way is that strategic and decision human input that's needed. It's not compliant in some areas as well. So definitely just checks and measures, make sure that there's the right kind of measurement to make sure that nobody's breaking rules or being illegal in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of on the same subject, but in a different way, that sort of where you have to be consistent, but then equally, make sure the nuances are different depending on the situation. It's kind of quite often people partner volume recruitment automatically with, call centers, customer service, early careers. But clearly volume recruitment is anything which is en masse ultimately. So when the roles are still volume but actually quite specialized, an example always comes in my head is engineers. Clearly they need to be skilled, but you still need them en masse. What do you put in place to ensure that those more niche roles where it may not be application led, the principles are covered off with what's required for those types of roles? So Claire, you mentioned before that yes, you've got the volume hiring, but then there's more strategic roles. Can you just, what you put in place to make sure everything's covered?
Absolutely. What we've been trying to do is apply consistency with every single type of role. So wherever we can, wherever appropriate, wherever candidates meet the minimum criteria, we introduce a human intervention and we chat things through. That way we can assess on potential, which is something that automation would miss. We can start talking with other tools that we've got. I did notice Ron Eldridge is on this call. So he twice in 1 week, Ron. So we're trying to introduce some behavioural fit tools in terms of finding out capability and how people would fit in. And we're trying to look at ways of introducing this consistently across every role. Admittedly, there are going to be extra processes for more senior roles than our lower level volume roles, but we're trying to get realism in from the point of advertising the role properly with as much detail as we can, irrespective of the level of role, looking at potential, treating every candidate with respect and the same, and getting human intervention in at the right point. Does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Simon, from your point of view, again, we don't just deal with early careers with our clients. We do have more niche roles, but it's en masse. What do you think are the key things that we put into our assessment strategy, our EVP strategy, our attraction strategy to make sure all bases are covered with those clients that need us for both volume, generally as well as early careers?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned partners. I mean, having access to data, I think is really important when you talked about engineering roles. That's exactly what we were hiring, those types of roles for Octopus. Plumbers, electricians, in very small towns across the UK. So having access to data such as horsefly, for instance, really gave us that opportunity to understand what the market looked like, the candidate pool looked like in those specific regions, and then be able to kind of tailor the message and the kind of the comms that were going out to those candidates. So we knew that we were going to be flooded with applications, therefore that was definitely a case of picking up the phone and having some conversations with candidates and talking to them about roles to generate pipelines in those areas. So you kind of have to manage that process of where you're getting that influx of applications coming in, but where you're also going out and really having to kind of sometimes sell a role to be able to build that pipeline. So absolutely, I think data is critical to that. And then again, you mentioned EVP, like really understanding, what is your selling point as an organization? What is it that stands you out, against your competitors? And it's not always salary. Increasingly, surveys that we run, particularly, I'd say, more focused from an early careers perspective, it's more around the culture of the organization. It's around the development that's put in place for those employees once they start, and being able to understand what their kind of 2, 3, 5 years will look like in your organization, and being able to articulate that as part of your attraction and EVP campaigns. You kind of, if you do one thing without doing the other, you're going to disappoint people and lose people at some point along the line, whether it's at some point through the recruitment process, or it's, as I think Andrew and James mentioned, once they start with that kind of retention and attrition. So it's about having that consistent messaging right from the very start, from attraction, and then keeping that going all the way through the process. A lot of people use assessment, for instance, purely just to understand the capabilities and potential, as Claire mentioned, or skills of candidates. We also see assessment as an extension of attraction. So by going through that assessment process, it's another touch point for us. It's another opportunity for us to be able to showcase our client's brand and what they stand for, even in the scenarios that we're using within those SJTs and online assessments, you know, to kind of talk about ethics and ethical behaviours within the workplace, and really bring the values of our the organisations that we work with to life. So it has to be, I think we've said consistent 1,000 times, but it has to be consistent throughout the entire process.
Yeah, I couldn't believe more. I remember when I first joined Amberjack and I saw how we do things, you know, how we continue that brand throughout the process. It's not just, oh, well, we're putting some automation in so they don't see the brand, you know, it's carried on all the way through with what we do as a supplier. So with regards to suppliers and partners, James, Andrew, Claire, you all have or do use suppliers, partners. I'd like is a better word for me, because that's where it works the best. So you've all used it in different guises, where it would be full, you know, almost full RPO, whether it be, you know, a bolt onto your in-house or just the use of technology. What do the best TA suppliers do for you? What does good look like to make sure that your complete TA strategy is the right one?
I think it's
I'll start
similar
with
for me.
Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was straight in. No, for me it's transparency and honesty. I literally this morning on a TA chat group, we were kind of throwing a few things around where it's the kind of the bull that, you know, where people they oversell. So it's that kind of what actually whether it's a tool or a process or a method, whatever that you're supplying, what can it do, what can't it do, and where's the development in that, without any sort of fluff, you know, just the kind of straight talking. And that is what can always springs to the top for me. You know, someone who can challenge, consult, bring good insight, bring data, and even to that little kind of cheeky, make us look good as well, you know, because you're bringing data that maybe we don't have access to from the outside world. We can network and we can talk to each other, but sometimes suppliers will get a better grasp on some of that as well. So anyone who can really do that, but then ultimately improve the capability, if it's a genuine, good working thing, whatever shape that's coming in, and then that shared accountability, and that kind of, you know, working on things together. But underpinning all of that for me has always been relationships, because I've worked with some of the kind of, you know, you get some of the best tech, and even when you go through a procurement process, I did one recently, you know, with Donata, ATS, and going through that process, what we found that some vendors were maybe kind of dropping down on was that giving confidence at certain levels within the business. So maybe your exec, for example, who don't quite hear and absorb information the same way maybe someone in procurement is doing. So it's that kind of understanding your audience and being able to build a good, strong, trusting relationship. That was a bit of a rant for me. It's a definite important one for me. That
Hopefully not
relationships.
me, Andrew.
Yeah, I was giving you the whole list. But no, which something I'll give you a shout out, Jared. Something you've always been very good at when we worked together in the past. And it's that kind of honesty and transparency for me. But obviously, what you're selling needs to work. That's also just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, on to you. You know, similar to Andrew, me and you work together in partnership as an outsource. What was it that worked for you? What was the differentiator, and ultimately, where do suppliers fall short sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like Andrew's answer was a pretty comprehensive answer.
Yeah.
And I do agree.
You can just say agree.
Yeah. I refer the gentleman to the question. Yeah, but I do agree that honesty is a table stake. If you don't have honesty in the relationship, then the relationship isn't going any further forward. One thing I'd add is the true ability to consult, and I don't necessarily mean necessarily answer the first question. It's to truly understand what are the underlying issues, get past the presenting problems, and look at the root causes and understand how can I solution for that business. That's where I've had the strongest relationships, is where a supplier will challenge me around the presenting problem and start to get a bit deeper into the business, understand how the business works, and understand how they can fit a solution to the challenge. That's where real relationships, I think, are sustainable, because you build then that different level of trust that this supplier not only is selling me something I want and need, but I genuinely believe that this solution will work in my environment.
So not only what they're selling has got to be good enough, it's got to be followed through with people who understand it and work with you to go through the challenges, because it doesn't always work perfect, but they make it a success together.
Absolutely, and let that solution grow and develop and build over time, which is what you and I did on many occasions, is start with an initial solution and then have to pivot because something changes, volumes change, they either go up, they go down, and you work together and you put in place a solution that works.
And that's where that keyword partner comes in, doesn't it? Rather than its supplier, we can work through it together. Simon, I'm conscious of time, so sorry to put you on the spot. But I want to get through to the questions because there's quite a few of them. But Simon, not bigging you and the rest of the account directors up too much, but you are the best of the best when it comes to that relationship. Backing up all the great processes and technology that we can bring into the game. Where does that come from, Simon? It's obviously it's the Amberjack way, but it's got to be innate in that person. Where does that come from for you, Simon?
The relationship building piece.
The relation, obviously making sure our technology is working and we're continuously improving. But both James and Andrew, I'm sure Claire, agree that relationships and partnership is key. Where does that come from for you?
Yeah, I think that fundamentally it's just from being a human, I guess. I think I guess there's like some core principles when it comes to account management that I generally tend to stick to, but I think expectation management is really critical when you're having conversations. It is very easy to overpromise. So I think just being realistic and having those honest conversations around what is achievable. To James's point, sometimes it's you do need to challenge, and I think there's respect that comes from challenging sometimes if you can evidence why why you're doing that. I think again, there's absolutely a personal. I mean, I build relationships from a personal level first before I think I get to professional. That's just the way that I've always been. With my team, the kind of advice that I give when talking about account management and building relationships is, I give a bit of information first. That's how I gain trust. That's how I get information. Is I give something first, and by doing that, you then start to build a dialogue, whether it's like, tell you about my kids, or I tell you about my holiday, or whatever it might be. Naturally, you then want to tell me something about yourself, and that's the foundation which we can then start to build that relationship on a personal level, before them sort of moving into the kind of the professional side of what those challenges are. But yeah, I mean, I again, ultimately, I don't know. Maybe one, you know, in the future, I'll write a book on it, but it'll probably be about the size of a post-it, because that's pretty much all it'll say. Because, you know, when I get asked that question, I don't necessarily understand how people can't build relationships. That's always my thing. It's like, you just talk to people. We're all humans. We all have the same needs, and you know, you just kind of you know, you be respectful. You be honest. You build I think a client relationship in the same way that you build a friendship, you know, and you build it on trust, and you build it on honesty, and you build it on transparency, and you ultimately, as a partner, you deliver on what it is that you've set out to do. And I think if you do that, what you'll find is, what I've certainly found is, it's then easier to open up those conversations a bit more, to understand from maybe a bit more of a strategic perspective the direction that you know, our client is going in, and they're maybe more willing to share with you some of the challenges and pressures that they're facing, either from their own stakeholders or from their customers, and that then allows you to kind of explore other solutions, as James put it, that may be, you know, available to them to help with those challenges. But yeah, just start things off simply is what I'd say.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. But I think equally, you mentioned anyone can build good relationships. Yes, to a point, but there's a lot of people who, when they that partnership or supplier, you know, not given the time to, because you know, they don't put enough manpower on it, is my take on it. But ultimately we do, and that's why you and the rest of the people do a great job. So
Just add to that, Jared, I'd also say we don't sell. Like, that's not what we do in our conversations. We find needs and we solutionize. Like, it's not about just, you know, we don't sell, and I think that's why we're given that time, and we're able to have those conversations, because people our clients are much more willing to have those conversations with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm done now. I'm sorry, I'll stop. I'll go.
No, thank you very much, Simon. That was really insightful. And thank you so much, Claire, Andrew, and James. We are very quickly going to go to questions. I am conscious of time. So, Richard, do you want to facilitate the questions, and then you know, Andrew, Claire, James, and Simon can answer where possible?
Absolutely. We've got a question here from Andrew, who says, when it comes to technology, what's the most important capability it should provide to ensure processes continuously evolve, rather than simply repeating the same decisions and approaches?
Claire, do you want to try that one?
Let's give it a go, see how we do. So I think I think what I'd be looking for from technology is not one linear solution. I'd be looking for a pot of solutions. There are many different situations that would require different technological solutions. Going back to what Simon's just said, all of these are human-led. So I would be expecting a partner or any technological answer to have human intervention from an account manager, and we would talk through, we would see what went right, what went wrong, and we would always be looking to improve. But that needs a human rather than technology. I'd be expecting a partner to look at things, challenge us, challenge the technology to make sure that anything that's low value for our hiring managers and candidates is taken out of the proposal.
Couldn't agree more. That's how it should be. Conscious that I don't think there's any other questions on the chat, but if anyone has any questions, if you want to write it down quickly on the meeting chat, or even mention it, and then let us know. Any more for any more? No. Okay, silence is golden. Well, I'd just like to thank everyone again. It's a lot of time to be taken out of your day. Hope people have got something out of it. We have recorded this, so we will send it around to the people who couldn't have made it. We can send it through to you if you wish, and you can share it with your teams, etc. Obviously, you know, contact Amberjack anytime if you ever want to talk through, you know, what your future looks like. As Simon mentions, we don't sell. We're just there to help you. We've got years of experience in the field, so you know we can work through it together to give you advice. So nice to see everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Take care.
Bye.